If you witnessed a terrible crime but speaking up would destroy your life, what would you do? This is the story of a man who chose silence, and how that choice haunted him every day until he found the courage to speak the truth.
In a small village where everyone knew everyone else's business, there lived a man named Ravi. He was as ordinary as they come. He worked as a shopkeeper, selling basic goods, rice, lentils, oil, spices, and household items. His shop was small, but sufficient to feed his family. Ravi was 42 years old, married to a gentle woman named Mira, and they had 2 children, a teenage daughter named Priya and a young son named Arun. They lived a simple, quiet life in a modest house at the edge of the village. If you asked anyone in the village about Ravi, they would say he was a good man. Honest, hardworking, quiet. Too quiet, some would say. Ravi never involved himself in village politics or disputes. He kept his head down, minded his own business, and avoided trouble. Why get involved in other people's problems? He would tell his wife. We have enough of our own to worry about. Mira would sometimes gently challenge him. But Ravi, sometimes standing up for what's right is more important than staying safe. Easy to say when you're not the one taking the risk. Ravi would reply, not unkindly. I have a family to protect. That comes first. The village had its own power structure, as all villages do. At the top was Thakur Vikram Singh, a wealthy landowner who owned most of the farmland in and around the village. He was a large, intimidating man with a loud voice and a violent temper. Everyone feared him. Thakur had connections to the local police and politicians. When disputes arose, they were usually settled in his favor, regardless of who was actually right. He had beaten people who opposed him. He had destroyed the livelihoods of those who crossed him. People whispered about his cruelty, but only in whispers. No one dared confront him openly. That's just how the world works, Ravi would say when others complained. The powerful make the rules. The rest of us survive by staying out of their way. Ravi's shop was on the main road, which meant he saw most of what happened in the village. People came and went, buying supplies, sharing gossip. Ravi listened but rarely commented. He was the perfect observer, present but invisible. And because he was so invisible, so overlooked, he became a witness to something that would change his life forever. It happened on a Thursday night, late in the monsoon season. Ravi had stayed late at his shop to finish some accounting work. The streets were mostly empty due to heavy rain earlier in the evening. Around 10 o'clock, Ravi was preparing to close when he heard raised voices outside. He looked through his window and saw 2 figures arguing in the street about 50 meters away, illuminated by a single street lamp. One was Thakur Vikram Singh, unmistakable with his large frame and commanding presence. The other was a younger man named Ramesh, a farmer who had been having a dispute with Thakur over water rights for his fields. Ravi couldn't hear the exact words, but the confrontation was clearly heated. Ramesh was gesturing angrily, his voice raised. Thakur seemed calm at first, but his body language was threatening. Ravi knew he should close his window and mind his own business. But something made him keep watching. The argument escalated. Ramesh pushed Thakur's chest with both hands. A foolish move, a desperate move. For a moment, Thakur stood still, absorbing the insult. Then, with terrifying speed, he grabbed Ramesh by the collar and struck him hard across the face. Ramesh stumbled backward, but instead of retreating, he came at Thakur again, swinging wildly. A fight broke out. Ravi's heart pounded. He should close the window. He should pretend he wasn't there. But he couldn't look away. The fight was brutal and one-sided. Thakur was larger, stronger, and more vicious. He beat Ramesh methodically, punch after punch, until the younger man fell to the ground. And then, instead of stopping, Thakur pulled out something that glinted in the lamplight. A knife. No, Ravi whispered, his hands trembling. No, don't. But Thakur didn't hear him. In a movement so quick Ravi almost missed it, Thakur stabbed Ramesh once, twice, 3 times. Ramesh's body went still. Ravi stood frozen, his mind refusing to accept what his eyes had just seen. Thakur looked around quickly, checking if anyone had witnessed the murder. His eyes swept past Ravi's shop, but the interior was dark except for a single lamp in the back room. He didn't see Ravi standing by the window in the shadows. Satisfied that he was alone, Thakur dragged Ramesh's body into a nearby alley and disappeared into the darkness. Ravi stood there, shaking uncontrollably. He had just witnessed a murder. Thakur Vikram Singh, the most powerful man in the village, had just killed Ramesh over a petty dispute. His first instinct was to run to the police. But even as the thought formed, he knew it was impossible. The police chief was Thakur's friend. They played cards together every Friday night. Who would they believe? The powerful Thakur or a nobody shopkeeper? His second instinct was to tell someone, anyone. But who? Everyone in the village feared Thakur. And if word got back to him that Ravi had talked? Ravi thought of his wife, his children. If Thakur could kill a man in the street without hesitation, what would he do to someone who tried to testify against him? Fear paralyzed him. He quickly locked his shop and hurried home through the back streets, avoiding the main road. He didn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the knife, the blood, Ramesh's body falling. The next morning, the village was in shock. Ramesh's body had been discovered in the alley. The official story, quickly established by the police, was that Ramesh had been killed during a robbery gone wrong. It must have been bandits from outside the village, the police chief announced. Ramesh was known to carry money. Tragic, but these things happen. No investigation was launched. No witnesses were sought. The case was closed within 2 days. Ramesh's widow, a woman named Kamala, didn't accept this explanation. My husband was killed for standing up to Thakur, she cried publicly. Everyone knows they were fighting over the water rights. Thakur murdered him. But she had no proof, no witnesses. And when she tried to file a complaint directly against Thakur, the police dismissed her. You're grieving and emotional, they told her patronizingly. You're making wild accusations against a respected man with no evidence. Be careful, or you could face defamation charges. Kamala was alone in her accusations. The village watched in sympathy but said nothing. Fear kept everyone silent, including Ravi. He told himself he was being smart, being careful. If he came forward, his testimony might not even be believed. And even if it was, Thakur had the money and connections to escape consequences. Meanwhile, Ravi and his family would become targets. It's not cowardice, he told himself. It's survival. I have to think of my family. But the guilt was already beginning to grow inside him like a cancer. Every day, Ravi saw Thakur walking through the village as if nothing had happened. The man would actually stop by Ravi's shop occasionally to buy cigarettes, chatting casually as if he hadn't murdered someone. Good morning, Ravi, Thakur would say with a smile. Business good? Yes, sir, Ravi would reply, his voice shaking slightly, his hands fumbling with the transaction. Did Thakur know Ravi had been there that night? Was he testing him? Or was he genuinely unaware? Ravi couldn't tell, and the uncertainty was torture. Meanwhile, Kamala and her children were suffering. With Ramesh gone, they had no income. The water rights dispute that had cost Ramesh his life was ruled in Thakur's favor, and Kamala lost even the small plot of land her husband had farmed. She and her children became destitute, forced to take whatever work they could find just to eat. Ravi would see them sometimes, and the guilt would stab at him like a physical pain. He knew he could help them. His testimony might not put Thakur in jail, but it would at least establish the truth. It might give them some justice, some compensation. But every time he thought about speaking up, fear would grip him. Images of his own family suffering would flood his mind. "I'm sorry," he would whisper to himself, looking away when Kamala passed. "I'm so sorry." Weeks turned into months. The village moved on. Ramesh's murder became old news. Life continued. But for Ravi, nothing was normal anymore. The guilt consumed him. It invaded his thoughts constantly. At work, he would find himself staring into space, replaying that night in his mind. At home, he was distracted and irritable. "What's wrong with you?" Mira asked him one evening. "You haven't been yourself for months." "Nothing's wrong," Ravi lied. "I'm just tired." But Mira knew him too well. "You're keeping something from me." "What is it?" Ravi wanted to tell her. The burden of the secret was crushing him. But he couldn't. Telling her would make her complicit. It would put her in danger too. "I said I'm fine," he snapped, more harshly than he intended. His relationship with his wife began to suffer. His children noticed their father's strange behavior and became worried. Ravi started having nightmares. In his dreams, he would see Ramesh's face, accusing him. "You could have helped. You chose not to." Sometimes he would dream that it was his own son lying in that street, and he would wake up in a cold sweat, gasping for air. He began avoiding certain parts of the village. He couldn't bear to walk past the place where Ramesh had been killed. He avoided eye contact with Kamala when he saw her. One day, Kamala came to his shop to buy rice. She was thin and tired looking, aged by grief and poverty. Ravi served her mechanically, his hand shaking as he measured out the rice. As she was leaving, she turned back and looked at him directly. "You seem troubled, Ravi ji," she said softly. "Are you all right?" The question was innocent, but to Ravi it felt like an accusation. Did she know? Could she somehow sense his guilt? "I'm fine," he muttered, unable to meet her eyes. "We all carry burdens," Kamala said, "but sometimes sharing them makes them lighter." After she left, Ravi closed his shop early and went home. He locked himself in a room and wept. He was a coward. He knew it. He was letting an innocent family suffer while a murderer walked free. But what could he do? It was too late now. Too much time had passed. Even if he spoke up now, who would believe him? And Thakur would certainly come after him for trying to reopen the case. "You're trapped," he told himself. "You made your choice that night. Now you have to live with it." But living with it was becoming impossible. Ravi started drinking, something he had never done before. It was the only way to quiet the voices in his head, the only way to sleep without nightmares. Mira grew more worried. "Ravi, please talk to me. Whatever is wrong, we can face it together." But Ravi shut her out. He couldn't burden her with this. He had to bear it alone. 6 months passed, then a year, then 2 years. Ravi became a shadow of himself. The guilt didn't fade, it grew stronger. Every day was a struggle. Every interaction with another human being felt like a lie. He was dying inside, slowly, from the weight of his silence. The breaking point came 2 years after the murder. Ravi's daughter, Priya, now 16, came home from school one day crying. Mira rushed to her, alarmed. "What happened? Are you hurt?" Through her sobs, Priya explained. "There was a fight at school. One girl was bullying another, and I saw it happen. The teacher asked who witnessed it. I wanted to speak up, but I was afraid the bully's friends would target me next. So I said nothing. And now the innocent girl is being punished because no one defended her." She looked at her father with tears streaming down her face. "I'm a coward, Papa. I could have helped, but I was too scared." The words hit Ravi like a physical blow. He was looking at a mirror. His daughter had learned from his example. She had learned that silence is acceptable when speaking up is difficult. And in that moment, Ravi realized something terrible. His cowardice wasn't just hurting him. It was teaching his children to be cowards too. "Priya," he said, his voice choked with emotion, "you are not a coward. Fear is natural. But you're right. We have a duty to speak up when we witness injustice, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. But you always say to mind our own business," Priya said, confused. "You always say to avoid trouble." Ravi felt sick. His daughter was right. That was exactly what he had been teaching them. That night, Ravi couldn't sleep. He lay awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the man he had become. Thinking about the man he wanted his children to see when they looked at him. The next morning, Ravi made a decision. He couldn't live with the silence anymore. He couldn't let his cowardice define him and poison his family. He was going to tell the truth, no matter the cost. He went to his wife and finally told her everything. He told her about that night 2 years ago, about witnessing the murder, about the guilt that had been destroying him ever since. Mira listened in shock, then held him as he cried. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked gently. "I was trying to protect you," he said. "I thought if I kept it to myself you'd be safe." "Ravi," she said firmly, "we're a family. We face things together. And you should have told the truth from the beginning." "I know," he whispered. "I know that now. But I was afraid." "And you're not afraid anymore?" "I'm terrified," he admitted. "But I'm more afraid of what I've become. I'm more afraid of teaching our children that silence is acceptable in the face of evil. I'm more afraid of living the rest of my life as a coward." Mira took his hand. "Then we'll face this together. Whatever happens, we'll face it together." The next day, Ravi went to the police station. His hands were shaking, his heart pounding, but his resolve was firm. The same police chief who had dismissed Kamala's accusations 2 years ago looked at Ravi with surprise and suspicion. "What can I do for you, Ravi?" "I need to reopen the case of Ramesh's murder," Ravi said, his voice stronger than he felt. "I have new information." The police chief's expression darkened. "That case is closed. Robbery gone wrong. What new information could you possibly have?" "I witnessed the murder," Ravi said. "I saw Thakur Vikram Singh kill Ramesh. I saw everything." The room went silent. The police chief stared at him in disbelief, then anger. "Do you understand what you're saying? You're accusing one of the most respected men in this region of murder. Do you have any proof beyond your word?" "My testimony is proof," Ravi said, though his voice trembled. "I saw it happen. And where were you 2 years ago when this investigation was open?" the chief demanded. "Why are you only coming forward now?" "Because I was a coward," Ravi admitted. "I was afraid. But I can't live with that anymore. I'm telling you now, Thakur killed Ramesh in cold blood over a water rights dispute. I saw it happen." The police chief leaned back in his chair, studying Ravi. "You do realize that Thakur will destroy you for this accusation, whether it's true or not. You realize your family will suffer?" "I know," Ravi said. "But they're already suffering because I've been dying inside for 2 years. And more importantly, Kamala and her children have been suffering because I stayed silent. It's time for the truth." Word of Ravi's accusation spread through the village like wildfire. Reactions were mixed. Some people admired his courage. Others thought he had lost his mind. "He's signing his own death warrant," people whispered. "Thakur will crush him." And indeed, Thakur's reaction was swift and brutal. He filed a defamation lawsuit against Ravi. He had his associates spread rumors that Ravi was mentally unstable, an alcoholic making wild accusations. Thakkur's lawyer visited Ravi's shop. "My client is willing to be merciful," he said smoothly. "Recant your false accusation publicly, and he'll drop the lawsuit. Your life can go back to normal." "No," Ravi said firmly. "I told the truth. I won't take it back." "Then you're a fool," the lawyer said. "This will ruin you." And it nearly did. Ravi's shop began losing customers. People who feared being associated with him. People who believed Thakkur's smear campaign. Bills piled up. Threats were made. But something unexpected happened. Kamala, Ramesh's widow, came to Ravi's shop one evening. She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said simply. "For 2 years, everyone said I was crazy, that I was imagining things. You're the only one with the courage to tell the truth. Whatever happens, thank you." Her gratitude gave Ravi strength. And then others began to come forward, not as witnesses, but as supporters. People who were tired of Thakkur's tyranny. People who had been wronged by him, but had been too afraid to speak. A journalist from a larger city heard about the case and became interested. He started investigating Thakkur's background and discovered a pattern of violence, intimidation, and corruption. The case that the local police wanted to ignore began attracting outside attention. Higher authorities became involved. The pressure mounted. The legal process was long and painful. It took nearly a year for the case to finally go to trial. During that time, Ravi's family suffered greatly. His shop was vandalized twice. His son was bullied at school by children whose parents sided with Thakur. The family had to move to a different part of the village for safety. There were nights when Ravi wondered if he had made the right choice. The cost was so high. His family was paying for his decision. But Mira remained steadfast. "You did the right thing," she would tell him when he doubted. "Our children are learning what real courage looks like. That's worth more than any comfort or safety." The trial finally began. Ravi took the witness stand and testified about what he had seen that night 2 years ago. Thakkur's lawyers attacked his credibility relentlessly. "You're a known drinker," they said. "You admit you waited 2 years to come forward. You have no physical evidence. You're just trying to get attention or perhaps extort money from my client." But Ravi stood firm. "I know what I saw. Thakur Vikram Singh murdered Ramesh. That is the truth, no matter how much time has passed." The journalist's investigation proved valuable. He had uncovered evidence of Thakur's past violence, his corrupt dealings, his intimidation of witnesses in other cases. A pattern emerged. Other victims of Thakur began finding courage in Ravi's example. One by one, they came forward with their own stories of being threatened, beaten, or cheated by Thakur. The tide began to turn. In the end, Thakur was convicted, not just for Ramesh's murder, but for several other crimes that the investigation had uncovered. He was sentenced to life imprisonment. When the verdict was announced, Kamala wept with relief and gratitude. Justice, delayed but not denied, had finally been served. But the victory was bittersweet for Ravi. His shop never recovered. His financial situation remained difficult. Some villagers still viewed him with suspicion or resentment. People don't like those who disrupt the status quo, even when that status quo is unjust. Ravi had paid a heavy price for his testimony. Yet when he looked at his children, he saw something that made it all worthwhile. He saw respect in their eyes. He saw pride. They looked at their father not as a weak man who hid from trouble, but as someone who had found courage when it mattered most. Priya, his daughter, came to him one day after the trial ended. "Papa, I told the truth at school about that fight I witnessed. I stood up for the girl who was being bullied." "What happened?" Ravi asked. "The bullies were angry at first, but the teachers took action. And the girl I helped thanked me. It felt good, Papa. Scary, but good." Ravi hugged his daughter. That's what courage feels like, he said. It's not the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite being afraid. Years later, Ravi's life had stabilized somewhat. His shop still operated, though more modestly. His family had adapted to their changed circumstances. But Ravi had gained something more valuable than financial security. He had gained peace with his conscience. The nightmares stopped. The guilt that had consumed him for 2 years was replaced by a quiet pride in having done the right thing, even when it was difficult. One day, a young man came to Ravi's shop. He introduced himself as Ramesh's son, the boy who had been just 8 years old when his father was murdered. "Sir," the young man said, "I wanted to meet you. My mother told me what you did. You gave up so much to tell the truth about my father's death. Because of you, I grew up knowing that my father's killer faced justice. That meant everything to our family." He held out his hand. "Thank you. Your courage gave us closure and dignity." Ravi shook his hand, tears in his eyes. "I only wish I had found that courage sooner. I'm sorry it took me so long." "But you found it," the young man said. "That's what matters. Not everyone does." After he left, Ravi sat in his shop, thinking about the journey he had taken. From cowardice to courage. From silence to truth. It hadn't been easy. The path of courage never is. But it had been right. He thought about all the people who, at this very moment, were witnessing injustices and choosing silence. He understood their fear. He had lived it. But he also knew the cost of that silence, both to society and to the soul. That evening, Mira asked him if he regretted his decision to speak up, given all the hardship it had caused their family. Ravi thought carefully before answering. "The truth is complicated. Yes, we suffered. Yes, it was hard. But regret? No, I don't regret it." "Why not?" she asked. "Because I can look at myself in the mirror now," he said simply. "Because I can look at our children without shame. Because I sleep without nightmares. Because a killer is behind bars instead of walking free. Because Kamala got justice for her husband. Those things are worth more than money or comfort." He paused, then added, "I regret that I didn't speak up immediately. I regret the 2 years I spent in cowardly silence. But I don't regret finally finding the courage to tell the truth. That saved me." Mira smiled and took his hand. "You saved all of us. You showed our children what it means to have integrity." As the sun set that evening, Ravi sat on his doorstep, watching village life flow past. He was no longer the invisible man, the one who kept his head down and avoided trouble. He was Ravi, the witness, the man who spoke up, the man who chose courage over fear. And in a world where too many people chose silence, that made all the difference. Remember, dear viewer, that silence in the face of injustice is not neutrality. It's complicity. Every day, people witness wrongs, in their workplaces, their communities, their families. And every day, they face the same choice Ravi faced. Speak up and face consequences, or stay silent and protect themselves. There is no easy answer. Speaking truth to power is genuinely dangerous. It can cost you relationships, money, safety, and peace. But silence has its own cost. It costs you your conscience. It costs you your integrity. And it allows evil to flourish. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the decision that something else, truth, justice, doing what's right, is more important than that fear. You may not have witnessed a murder, but if you've seen bullying, corruption, abuse, or injustice and chosen silence out of fear, you know the weight of that choice. It's never too late to find your voice. It's never too late to choose courage. Thank you for watching. If this story inspired you, share it with someone who needs to hear this message.